All right, let's go on ahead and get started. So we are so excited to be able to welcome Mia Birdsong here today for our keynote for HerDU. For folks who don't know me, my name is Neda Kichia, and I am the programming co-chair of the HerDU conference. And so we've been working really hard to bring this to you all today. And specifically for our keynote today, we have the Dean of the School of Social Work with us, who co-sponsored this whole event and made this possible. So we're super excited to be able to bring this to the conference this year. Before I dive into any of the logistics and introduce folks and we go forward in our program, it is really important, and we do want to take the time to do a land acknowledgement. So I will be sharing a few words and a few thoughts that has been informed by MSU's land acknowledgement, and then of course edited with my own words. So first and foremost, we want to explicitly acknowledge that the University of Denver occupies the traditional territories and ancestral homelands of the Cheyenne and the Arapaho nations. This area was also the site of trade, hunting, gathering, and healing for many other Native nations. We recognize and honor the Indigenous peoples as the original stewards of the land, water, plants, and animals who called this place home. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this territory. We respect the many diverse Indigenous peoples still connected to the land. We pay our respect to them and give thanks to all tribal nations and the ancestors of this place who continue to fight and survive. By creating the space to acknowledge and to bear witness, the ties that these nations have to their traditional homelands are renewed and reaffirmed in notion. And notion without action is performative. In our course and in this space today, we'll be interrogating much of ourselves, our histories, and how we move through the world. DU has brought us here, even in this virtual format, and it is here that we will name the unnamed, and doing so in community. So with that being said, I'm super excited to be able to kick off this space in this session together. I mentioned course a second ago. I think there's going to be a lot of learning for us all. And I'm so excited, right? Knowing that we can both learn from our keynote, learn in community, and also learn from the knowledge that exists in the space. So thank you all for taking the time and showing up to make this possible. One quick piece that I want to acknowledge is that later on today, we will have a Q&A section where we will be doing a practice called progressive stacking. So we'll drop a little bit more information about what that is in the chat. But a few pieces to know is that for folks, you'll just put an asterisk ahead of your questions. So there'll be a lot more there that we'll be talking about in a little bit, but we'll drop that in the chat for as far as how you can do that. So depending on how you self-identify, this is a technique that's used to give historically underrepresented groups a greater chance to have their voices and their questions answered. With that being said, one of the things that we did very differently this year for HerDU is that we have performances kind of built out through a lot of our big events. And so I am so excited to welcome the talent and the skill of one of our own DU students, who is a pianist and artist and amongst a lot of other things. So in a second here, I'm going to introduce you to our incredible pianist who is going to perform a couple pieces. So look at this beautiful setup. Yes, hello. So for folks, this is Camilla Ibanez, and so she is a first-year student at the University of Denver. She's also a Colorado Women College scholar, amongst a lot of other things. She identifies as queer Indigenous female. She is in the CWC Leadership Program, the Colorado Women's College Program, Scholars Program, as well as the Native Student Alliance. Cami is a musician, playing the piano and the drums. So I'm going to go on ahead and turn it over to you to share your first piece with us, and then tell us a little bit more before your second piece.
Hi everyone, I'm Cami. I play piano and drums, and today I'm going to perform two original pieces. My first one's called Lovely Days, and the meaning for it changes throughout the day and throughout the weeks. It just depends. But today for me, it means that I remember as a woman, I can always have a lovely day, and I can remember I have the right to vote, and I can use my voice for and to talk about things I care about. As I said earlier, that was called Lovely Days. My second piece I will play is called It Will All Be Okay. And it is a piece that reminds me that no matter what happens to me, to the world, or around me, it will all be okay. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, great job, Cami. Thank you so much for these incredible pieces and for sharing what they mean to you, right? And why today, what all of those components. So on that side, thank you so much. Cool. Thanks, Cami. And again, we're excited to see what you continue to do at the university and beyond. So continue to write, continue to do that work. And thank you for bringing a piece of your brilliance for us today here today. So To the collective, we are, like I said, so excited about what's to come. So I'm going to hand it off here in a minute to Dean McBride out of the Graduate School of Social Work to kind of facilitate us on and continue us forward. And before I do, I again just want to remind folks that closed captioning is available for our conversation today. Looking at this list of people on this call, there are some great humans here. So the other piece I want to say is, please, as we go through the session, please know that we do want to see the questions that you all have. So there is a Q&A feature. And we are going to be using a tool called progressive stacking. So that was posted a little bit earlier in the chat, but we'll repost that. But it's essentially a technique to give historically underrepresented and or marginalized, knowing that those go hand in hand, folks a greater chance to speak and to actually have your questions asked. So if you choose to self-identify in any way with those identities, we ask that you put an asterisk in your questions, and you can drop those at any point in the conversations as we move forward. So thank you all for making this and being here. So with that being said, I am so excited to introduce Dean McBride out of the Graduate School of Social Work. Dr. Amanda Moore McBride is a Morris Endowed Dean and Professor of the Graduate School of Social Work at BU, or the University of Denver. McBride is an internationally recognized expert and leader in the field of civic and community engagement in higher education. Her scholarship focuses on ways to promote engagement through education, programs, and policy, addressing issues of inclusion. And we are honored to be co-sponsoring today's keynote with GSSW. So please help me welcome Dean McBride to facilitate the rest of our time together.
Good afternoon. Welcome to today's dialogue on reclaiming family, friendship, community in the name of justice through conversation and dialogue with me, Birdsong. Netta, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for all the hard work of the Women's Coalition in putting this event together, but in owning these moments that we have to connect with one another, to have Cami display their talent. I love the tagline of the conference, that it's mind, body, and spirit. And I felt like Cami was healing our body and our spirits through that beautiful music. Thank you both so much. So have y'all been having a good week? It's been a full week of amazing events, and today we'll continue that. I have so appreciated the centering of women's experiences, not only for celebration, but also in terms of interrogating the discrimination that women experience, and then provocative conversation around how we continue to move forward as a society. I'm delighted that we continue that conversation with our event right now. I want to invite you in. All right, you got your hot cups of tea. You've turned off all your other screens, right? You're gonna put your feet up and you're gonna listen deeply, because that's what we need to do. Journeying toward justice means unlearning and relearning, and it means listening deeply to learn and to contemplate where we are and how we can move forward. In terms of where we are, I so appreciate that Netta started with a land acknowledgement, and I want to pick up on that. In the spirit of learning, we need to acknowledge the culpability of the founder of the University of Denver in the Sand Creek genocidal massacre toward the original peoples, the Arapaho and Cheyenne nations. And it's not enough to acknowledge, just like Netta said. We have to be committed to justice and to righting the wrongs. And there are so many wrongs. For us at the Graduate School of Social Work, we believe that a primary root of those wrongs is in our distance from one another, our disconnection, and thus that disconnection from ourselves. This truly is a source of hate. So social work, we got to work the social, right? We got to focus on connecting others, on shrinking that space between us individually and collectively. We believe that by shrinking this space that we realize our highest selves and our greatest potential as a species can be unleashed. It's in these moments of realizing where our private self-interests intersect with others that we can move toward collective action, where we can collectively do and be better. It is this intersection where social change, where policy change has its greatest potential. And Mia Birdsong knows that all too well. She knows that intimately. She has dedicated her entire life. I love people like Mia, where it's not about your personal life over here and your profession or your career over there. She is so intimately woven them together, living what she talks about. She moves these intersections into action, and she helps us do it collectively, as she is a collector of stories, and she makes meaning of them for us so that we can envision a different reality, that we can envision a different life in the United States. In her book, How We Show Up, Reclaiming Family, Friendship, and Community, she points us to the promise that we all have within us if we commit intentionally to closing those gaps between us and elevating the voices and the experiences of the majority. She has incredible platforms and organizations. She's a founder, she's an agitator. She has done this at multiple levels, local, community, and at a national level. And we are so grateful that she is here to share herself with us and her experience. She's asked that we are more interactive today. She's going to share some opening remarks, but she really wants your questions, your reflections, and I'm here to help bring those forward. So please activate that Q&A, and as she's speaking, share your reflections and engage intimately in learning and envisioning a new future together. Mia, thank you so much for being here with us today. We're blessed.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Early in the pandemic, like late March of last year, I got this group text from my friend Sarah. And in it, she said that she was going to the grocery store and that if we, the three of us she'd included in the text, needed anything to let her know. And these were the days like when we were told we needed to have, 2 to 3 weeks of whatever we needed at home because we were all like locked down. And my first reaction was to say no, right? I didn't need anything. I could go to the store myself. But when I asked myself, like, why not say yes? I was actually almost out of salt. And if she got me some salt, it meant that I could go another week without going to the store. So I reminded myself of this quote from Retta Morris, quote that I heard, I don't know, had heard 4 years before. I had a post-it of it above my desk. I included it in my book. It's okay to ask for help. In fact, by doing so, we are taking part in the divine circle of giving and receiving. While we often focus on what the request means for the asker or recipient, we should remember that giving can be transformative for the helper. By not asking for help when you need it, you are blocking that flow. So I said yes. And Sarah would periodically text this little group of us before she went to the store. The first time I asked for salt. Another week it was oats and yeast because I was baking bread like everybody else. Another week it was coffee. And each time I was truly supported by the item she brought. Each time I experienced some ease, but more importantly, I felt connected and cared for. And in a time that has created conditions in which it can be hard for us to feel connected and hard for us to care for others, that feeling has fueled my resilience. But I'd almost said no. And in similar instances, I have totally said no. And I bet you all can think of a time that someone has offered you some support that would have been helpful, and you said no. Why are we like this? I'll tell you why. The American dream. On its face, the American dream seems great, right? Anyone with a little hard work and grit can climb the mythological ladder to prosperity. The American dream is about conquering obstacles and moral discipline. It's about the struggle and dedication of the self-determined individual. But the success and happiness idealized in this story is about an individual who makes it without help, right? They're self-made, and they sit atop that ladder by themselves. It tells us that if we're strong enough and good enough and capable enough, if we push ourselves hard enough, we won't need help and we'll be successful. The American dream has made us allergic to asking for or accepting support. The American dream is a pernicious celebration of toxic individualism and false independence. The American dream myth of individual accomplishment and success has made us deny our inherent interdependence. So we struggle mightily to do it alone, to prove ourselves to an unrealistic and unhealthy standard. When we're stretched thin, when we are suffering, when we are overwhelmed, too often we think the answer is to push through and endure, to suck it up, instead of reaching for the hands and hearts of others to bring us ease. But here's the other thing. The American dream tells us that not only do we have to be ruggedly independent to be successful and happy, but if we're not working hard and being productive, we are not worthy of success and happiness. The Insight Center for Community Economic Development did a study a few years ago and found that Americans across region and age and race and gender believe that work is morally good and work confers personhood. The American dream has us convinced that our humanity is conditional and that we must be productive to be deserving. So we're out here sacrificing our well-being in an effort to earn our humanity. Even as we try to level up our self-care and enrich our lives, our time is organized around work. We fit in movement and meals and time with loved ones and time to ourselves around our work time. Work is the sun around which the universe of our lives revolves. And if work demands more time, we cut the things that sustain us and give our lives meaning. Thinking back over the last year, how many second cups of coffee have you had to replace a nap? How many meals have you eaten while working at your computer? How many times have you worked late and spent less time on you? How many times did you say yes, even though your plate was full? One of the messy gifts of the pandemic is that we are all struggling in some way. And it's forced us to contend with our expectations around both productivity and independence. Few of us are operating at our pre-pandemic capacity. I know I'm not. And a virus that can travel around the planet in a few weeks makes clear how connected we are. And if you didn't know before the pandemic how dependent you are on other people to get everything that makes your life happen, from food to sweatpants to childcare, you can't help but know it now. So I spent the 2 years before the pandemic doing what I thought was writing a book about connection and community. And the last 13 months have made me realize that it was also a 2-year journey for me to learn how to better cultivate and tend to interdependence and mutuality in my life. We're all familiar with the generosity of giving. And in some broad systemic ways, we definitely need to work on that. In the wealthiest nation on the planet, no one should not have food or housing or healthcare. These injustices exist because we created them. But in our lives, in our intimate spaces, in our relationships with our loved ones, in our close community, with our colleagues, we need to get better at the generosity of receiving. When we're struggling and we don't reach for help or relief, we're withholding a gift. We're rejecting the stake we have in each other's well-being. We're repudiating our place in beloved community. The alchemy of the divine circle of giving and receiving cultivates more love. It bends time and creates spaciousness. It generates energy. It's not about getting out of it as much as we put in. It's that our input is transformed into a wholly different material that's not possible to create on our own, like we're spinning gold from straw. It's my friend Sarah who brought me salt. I texted her at one point just to let her know how much I appreciated her kindness. And she responded with this: generosity is a generative practice for me, so I truly find joy in these small acts, especially in these times. And I'd seen that. I'd seen it in her face the first time she dropped off the salt. I happened to be in my living room in the front of the house, and I waved to her as she walked down the stairs after making her delivery. And her face lit up. Even behind her mask, I could see how good she felt caring for me in this small way. This generative circle of giving and receiving creates collective ease, like Sarah did for me, like I do for others. And it also weaves more connection between us. The vulnerability and intimacy it allows us to know each other more deeply. Why is this important? Because we are human, and humans are psychologically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually social animals. Even the most hermetic among us needs love, care, and connection to thrive. We have got to stop glorifying behaviors and conditions that extract so much from us. Hard work. Why's it got to be hard? Excellence and exceptionalism. What about average? I love some Beyonce, but what about us basic bitches? We have to rediscover our interdependence and our connection, not only for our own well-being, but to stop perpetuating the idea that any of us has to prove our humanity. By not asking for help, we're supporting the idea that everyone must excel, must achieve, and must produce on their own to prove they are worthy. When we do this, we're saying we don't belong here unless we can demonstrate our value. We're saying we're not worthy of access to food and clean water and shelter, of love and care, of safety and protection, unless we can demonstrate our value. Over the last couple of months, we have right now the murder trial of Derek Chauvin. We had the Atlanta spa shootings, Georgia's passage of Jim Crow-like voter suppression legislation, and a record number of anti-transgender bills introduced to state legislators across the country. We have seen Black people, Asian people, poor people, transgender people being attacked because our humanity is not a given. We have to relearn what it means to be human. We have to tell a story about what it means to be successful and happy. And the story we need to tell says our deservedness is inherent to us, not something we have to earn, and it's not something we can unearn. It says we're valuable and worthy just because we exist. To live into the truth of that story, we have to let ourselves be seen wholly and fully, not just for our wins and successes and the ways in which we do good and do well, not just after we fixed our mistakes and navigated through our challenges, but also when we are a raggedy mess, when we are overwhelmed and lost, when we feel broken and don't know what to do next. We're brought closer by being up in each other's business, by allowing our softness and vulnerability to be seen and tended to. I want all of you to take a breath and maybe close your eyes and lower your gaze. And I want you to ask yourself right now, how do I need help? What hardship am I staying silent about? What am I struggling with on my own? What hurt part of myself am I hiding? want you to hold that in your heart right now and say to yourself, I am worthy of ease. I am worthy of support. I am worthy of being seen just as I am. I am enough. I am not too much. Take a breath and notice gravity under the bottoms of your feet, the backs of your legs. That is the earth holding you. And no matter what mistakes you've made, what boxes on your to-do list remain unchecked, how messy your home is, what you ate today, how long it's been since you took a shower, you are worthy and the earth knows it. She holds you just as tightly as she holds others. And this time, when the uncertainty of our lives is laid bare, know that the earth is always holding you. Take a breath. Notice that your breath is the wind. The heat in your core, the synapses firing in your nervous system are fire. Your tears, your sweat are water. Your blood and bones are earth. What's outside us is also inside us. It's all the same thing. Redwood, ocean, sparrow, mountain, sunshine, you. You are nature. It's inside you. You do not have to go back to nature other than to return to yourself in your connection to all that is alive. Open your eyes and look at us here. All of us brought together in this moment to share in this experience of celebration, of reflection, of contemplation. Even though we are not physically together, feel into the presence of everyone in this place right now. Legendary civil rights activist Ruby Sales said, "It is in community and in relationship with others that we locate a self that we can never find being in isolated. It is in community and relationship with each other that we come to know the consciousness and spirit of God that is in each of us." What choices are you making to give yourself permission to rest? Who might you reach out to ask for help? What hard conversation do you need to have to set clearer boundaries in your life to create more ease? The extractive, corrosive pull of the American dream isn't going to release us from its grasp unless we loosen its hold. We have to root it out of ourselves whenever and wherever we find it. The opportunity before us right now is to not return to normal, to not let the comfort of the familiar pull us back to a version of normal that harms us. We can choose a future in which our ease is centered, in which rest is a given, in which our full humanity is honored, in which each of us has access to what our bodies and spirits need to be cared for. In the future I want, we are all sitting in the divine circle of giving and receiving. And we get to the future we want by practicing it now. Thank you.
We just went to a church service we didn't know we needed midday on a Thursday. Thank you so much. The liberation that comes from your words and the permission you're giving all of us to be fully human. We We needed that. We need that. I feel like you just dropped the mic and now I've got to ask you to pick the mic back up, but
Pick it back up.
let's take it a few steps further. I want to pick up on courageousness at being awkward, right? Those first steps
Yeah.
of that generosity of receiving. My dad contracted COVID and died of it, and I contracted it from him during his hospice care. And one of my faculty reached out and said, you need a meal train. Everyone in your family is in isolation. That's what you need. And my response was, no, thank you so much for thinking of me. And she did it anyway. And it was the best thing. It was exactly what I needed. It was the thing I couldn't ask for. She was courageous. She was courageous. She knew what I needed and she did it.
Yeah.
How could have I been more courageous, right? And so, yes.
So first, I just want to acknowledge your loss. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
My dad died a little over 10 years ago, and I still miss him every day.
Thank you.
You know, sometimes we don't know what we need. And there's something really powerful about when the people in our lives don't, like, you know, who know us well, take the risk to be more intimate with us and give us something that we don't know we need. You know, and I think there's this tricky place to navigate around consent and boundaries, right? Because you were asked and you said no, but this friend knew you well enough to know that that no was pride, was conditioning, was grief, right? And was doing, you know, was going to do something for you that like was not like may cross that boundary, but it's not like it was gonna, you know, providing you with some soup was not going to like be a violation. And I think, you know, we part of it is about like how do we listen to our instinct about who our people are? How do we be close enough to folks to know what they need or feel our way toward what might be helpful when they don't know? You know, when George Floyd was murdered last year, I was doing a lot of space holding for Black folks, for people to process anger and grief, and to do that so that we don't end up with a bunch of PTSD around, you know, cycles of white violence. And several of my white friends, you know, I got a lot of like, I'm thinking about you texts, but which was nice, but a couple of my friends, they, like my friend Allie sent me a text and she was like, I'm going to bring your family a meal. Or do you have any restrictions? Like, she didn't ask me, can I do this? She was like, I would like to do this. Just want to know if there's some stuff you don't eat. So she didn't even, you know, if I wanted to, I could have said no, but she didn't ask, so that I didn't, so that she was bypassing the conditioning that we have, right, to say no to support. She was just like, this thing is happening. You don't need to think about it. And like, here you go. And in this time, it was so nice for her to not be like, you know, what can I do? Like, do you need anything? What would be helpful? And then just to not make it an option for me, really, to just be like, this is happening. Is there something you don't want? And it was so wonderful to not have to wrestle with my own conditioning around saying no, and to not have to think up what might be helpful too. And I know this is hard, right? Like, sometimes we have no idea what it is that people need. We have no clue. We don't know what would be helpful. Even if we've been through like a similar experience, we still don't know enough about what would be helpful. And like, sometimes we just have to guess. And and trust that, like, offering a meal is not going to make things worse. um so, and just to like, and even if, like, my refrigerator is actually full of food, I still know that what it does is it tells me that people who are in my life see me, right, and see that I'm suffering, see that I'm working really hard, whatever it is, and they're like, I want to do something to love on you. And sometimes that's the best that we can do. I will also say that I think we underestimate the power of listening. We don't often create enough space for just for our hardship, for us to like witness other people's hardship, right? Sometimes people don't need an action for us. They don't need us to try to fix something. They really just need us to witness their story, to listen to their story, to encourage and ask questions about, like, like your dad, right? Like I know for me, one of the most healing things was for people to ask me to talk about my father, and
Yes.
like, what my earliest memory of him was, or the last time I talked to him, or whatever. And just being able to tell those stories is part of what has helped me process my grief.
Thank you. Well, folks have lots of continued questions on this theme of being courageous and in the space of supporting one another. So in welcoming interdependence in our lives, how do we move from keeping score for the abundant gifts we give and receive?
Yes.
And there's a tendency to do that, right? So how do we disrupt that?
So, like, there are times, right, when that a relationship is out of balance. And that because you feel resentful. So one of the things my brilliant therapist, Shauna Soderston, told me is that resentment is information for you. And I was so mad. I was like, no, resentment is like when I get to be self-righteous, right? She was like, no, resentment's information for you. It means that you have, that a boundary of yours has been crossed. And it could be a specific boundary, or it could just be like, I've said yes too many times, or allowed, or taken on too much, right? So if you're feeling resentment in a relationship, that is information for you. So the other thing I think about when it comes to my relationships is that I try to think about them as being in a long arc, right? If I'm in relationship with somebody over decades, right, there are going to be times when I am doing more giving and they're doing more receiving. There are going to be other times when they're doing more giving and I'm doing more receiving. And it's also not about, so one, like looking in the long arc of something, like maybe things balance out. But the other thing is that people have different capacities. I don't, in my marriage, I do not ever expect that like we will do equal amounts of everything, right? I don't clean. I don't like to clean. My husband has like a much lower tolerance for mess than I do. So I don't clean the house, right? I do a bunch of other things. I pay the bills. I do most of the money making. I manage like, the kids' dentist appointments and stuff like that, but I do not clean. So it's also not about like, we're each going to do half of the housework, and we're each going to do half of the money management, and we're each going to do half of the childcare. That's not how that works. So part of it is like, what are people's different capacities and tolerances for different kinds of giving and receiving or labor, right? So there's that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that, when I think about all of what I'm learning from, like disability justice folks, it's also about recognizing like that people's like if someone has limited mobility, they're never going to go grocery shopping for you, period. That's just not what they're going to do, and they don't have to. It's about like in the web of relationships that you have in your life, are you getting all your needs met? It's not that like this one person, you're having this like 50-50 reciprocal relationship with them, and then you're having it with this person. It's that in the swirl of things in your life, the relationships, the work that you do, whatever you're doing for your own self-care, are you getting your needs met? And that that is a much more like rich, complex way to think about giving and receiving, right? It's not the one-on-one, it's not equal, because people are not equal. We're not equal, right? Like, I don't know how to, I'm trying to think of something I honestly don't know how to do. It's taking me a minute. I was gonna say build stuff, but that's not true. Whatever. There's something I don't know how to do, right? That like I need other people to do. And like my husband is much more likely to give me a massage than I am to give him one, right? Like that's just like how we roll. And for us, that works. When he wants a massage, he asks for one. He often gives me one without me soliciting it, and I love it, and that's great. If he doesn't like it, he can stop giving me massages, or he can be like, hey, we need to talk about this, right? But this works for us. So I think that there is like, we know when there's imbalance because we're feeling resentful, we're feeling exhausted, and then we need to examine, like, are we giving too much? Are there things that we want from a particular relationship that we're not giving? And then we need to have a grown-up ass conversation about it. But it is not about 50-50. It's not about the one-on-one. It really is like, in the web of your life, are you getting the things that you need?
Yeah. I mean, you should just see folks are loving everything you're saying. It's what they needed at this moment in time. And permission is a word that keeps coming up, but also practice. How do you
Yes.
practice this, right? And so there's
Let's be clear. I don't like do all this shit all the time well. Like I'm definitely still learning all of these things. And every time I talk about it, it reinforces it for me and makes me better at it. So like, let's be clear, like we're all in the practice of trying to do this and being really imperfect at it and fucking it up and trying again.
Well, I appreciate your humility, but we are sitting at your feet today. It's soaking up so much. So a combination of a couple of questions is around when you are feeling so low and you're even, you're overwhelmed, you're anxious. How do you actually connect more with yourself and what those needs are? And how that then goes into your relationships with others, but really getting in touch with yourself.
So I feel like there's like we all need to slow down and be curious. So when you feel, right, that anxiety, right, like our bodies are so wise and they usually tell us things before intellectually we know what they are, right? So you will feel anxiety rising in your chest, or you'll feel it, you'll feel that you've been silent, right? Like in your throat. The reason, and this is again what I feel like I learned from all of my various therapists and friends and practitioners, the reason that it shows up in our throat is not like because we're corny, but it literally is because like our throat is the place of silencing for us. So it's the like metaphor, right, about silencing comes from our bodies. So it's very real. You'll feel it like around here or in the back of your neck, right? If you haven't said something because you're resentful, it'll show up as tension in this part of your body. So I feel like we just like all need to, when we're feeling like the anxiety, when we're feeling depression, when we're feeling whatever, like check in with your body and like notice the parts of you that are giving you some information, and just like be tender with yourself. Like I often hold whatever part of it of me is feeling whatever it's feeling, and I just take some breaths and like notice it. And I feel like that is where the information comes, that I'm like, okay, what is this? What is my body telling me I need right now? Often I feel like many of us is to slow the fuck down.
Yep.
It is to like take, yes, I know I'm swearing a lot. When I get excited and I get real into it, then I just start cursing. Yeah, it's just to notice, to slow down, to take it, to have enough spaciousness. And like literally we're talking about like you take a few breaths, right? Like it doesn't take, like right now, let's do it. Let's just like everybody take a breath and check in with your body. What is it telling you, right? I have like all this like excitement right here in my body because I'm talking, and sharing information with you all, right? Like, and that just like, I get excited about it and I have things to say. That's what I'm noticing. So just notice. And like and sometimes we need to relearn the language of our bodies because we've been out of touch with it. But I feel like that's where we reconnect to the information about what it is we need.
Yeah. Let's put this in the context of the pandemic. There's been a few questions just around how we care for each other, especially as we emerge out of this. And everything from, how do we think about those that are younger, children, youth, older than, or older adults? How do we help them in these moments, moving from such an isolated period back into connection? That's one frame. And then another is there's a number of people who they're managers, they've got people under their care at work and asking, how can we recreate that workplace culture to center that ease? So I've kind of mashed those together, but let's maybe end there, Mia.
So partly don't ask me because I don't know. Like the young people and the elders in your life, you have people in your life who are struggling with the same thing, and you need to be asking them how they're navigating it, because you can be an ongoing conversation with each other. And I can only answer you once, and then I don't know how my advice like works. Yeah. So I'm like, if you're a parent and you're struggling with like how to support your kids around their isolation, like talk to other parents who are in your life. And like they are probably struggling with the same thing. Same with elders. If you have elders in your life, talk to other people who are like caring for or supporting elders. So let me say something about workplaces. I'm of two minds about this. One is that like we spend the majority of our waking hours as adults at work, and it needs to be a place where we're finding like relationship that we need. And I'm of another mind that like work is not family. Is not, because that's not how, like, if I don't do my job, my family will not like abandon me and fire me, but your job will. So I feel like we need to be mindful about how much we're attaching to our workplaces. In terms of ease, right? So I think about this like very fundamental thing. Like I was talking to somebody recently who she was going to go out, she was having vacation, and there was this like mad scramble to like do all this stuff before she left so that she wasn't leaving her coworkers with a bunch of stuff, which meant that she was working more, right? And I was like, why do we do that? Like our workplaces know that people are going to get sick, have children, go on vacation, like quit, like all that stuff. We know that. If your coworkers are burdened by you being absent, that means that your workplace has not hired enough people. We should basically all, like our standard should be that we work, I don't know, 32 hours a week. And then we have to work a little bit more if like when things happen, right? Instead of our standard is 40 hours a week, and then all of us are actually working like 60 because somebody goes out on vacation or somebody gets sick or like the project deadlines pile up or whatever. So if you're having to do that, that means that your boss has not hired enough people. That's what that means. So I think if we are running workplaces, we should be like, the standard for my people should be 32 hours, 4 days. Yes. And know that when stuff comes up, there is some padding and they can go up to working 40 hours. And let's be clear, you're paying them like what you were paying them before.
That's right.
Yeah. And if people are working overtime, it's because you're not doing your job right. You've underhired. That's what that means.
I don't want this to end. And I think there's a whole bunch of other people that don't either. You are a beautiful soul. You have reminded us we are too. And you've given
seriously, like, let's be clear about that. We're all on this like amazing journey. And no one is going to do this work for us. Like I'm like, if there's a thing and you're like, oh, we really should, like my neighborhood should have like, like a monthly potluck, or my kids' friends' parents should all be talking about like what it means for them to be going back to school. Like, you do that. If you think that that's a thing, then like go ahead. And I'm not saying you gotta do it by yourself, because that's not what it is. It really is like reel some other people in and be like, we should have this. Make it happen, y'all, because nobody's gonna come and save us.
I love it. You left us with advice to carry forward. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you so much to the Women's Coalition for hosting this event. This has been an incredible, incredible moment. I hope you can all go for a walk, drink a glass of water, and start putting this in action. Thank you for your wisdom.
Thank you all.
Glad that you were here. Thank you.
Bye.